an inspector or a contractor. So let me disclose that right in forefront. But again, there are certain things that are obvious to the eye. You walk in that property, the floor is cracking and creaking. You know there may be some issues. If there's the floor is unlevel, you know, if you see it separating from the wall, you may know that there are some structural issues going on. So at that time, that's when you're going to bring in a licensed professional, licensed, insured, bonded. You're going to bring that professional in and have them do an inspection, have them look at it and tell you, hey, yeah, this is what it's going to cost to repair this. But I sidebarred, so let me jump back into what I was originally talking about. Find a realtor and a firm that is going to represent you. That's the first and foremost. But before even doing that, make sure you're ready to purchase a home. Okay? And with that being said, make sure you have you're ready, you're financially sound. You know that your credit is ready. You should know what your credit score is. You should know if there's anything on your credit that needs to be disputed, if there's anything that is on your credit that has been reported in error. You need to know how to go about repairing that and disputing that. And I think maybe Latron will touch on that just a little bit. I'm not going to go there because that's not my level of expertise. But again, you want to know where you stand financially. Second, you also want to know the processes, and that's what I'm here for to kind of go over the home buying process. So first and foremost, know your credit score. Know what you if you're financially sound and ready to buy a house. This market is very competitive. And right now, interest rates are low, but guys, that's going to change. They're already starting to creep up. Then you've got to couple in inflation with that. So home prices are just ridiculously high right now. And for your average home buyer, it's hard to compete if you haven't positioned yourself and to become ready to compete. It's more than just, oh, I have a house, I want to list my house, I'm going to sell it. Okay, you sell that house, but because inventory is so low right now, are you going to have somewhere to go? So you have to factor in, you know, am I going to have to rent? Am I going to be able to find a property within the price point that I'm looking for? You sell your house for, right now, if your house, you do the comparative analysis. And what that is that we look at the properties that are in a community and we look at what they recently sold for within 6 months. That's kind of like our window. We want to see what houses in that neighborhood sold for. We want to see what they're listed and actively listed for. And we want to see if there were any that fell off the market, any that were canceled. We're going to look at that to kind of come up with the fact as a buyer, did they really price this house accurately? And I'm here to share with you guys right out the gate, a lot of these houses are overpriced. And as sellers, they can do that, you know, because they own the house. So they want to get the highest dollar that they can for their money. It's their house. So again, you're going to pay it if you want it. They're not going to price haggle with you. It is not, they're like CarMax. Do you want the house? If you don't, there are 50 others that want it. So a lot of this competitiveness, when it's a buyer's market, there are two different types of market. There's a buyer's market and a seller's market. We are definitely in a seller's market where the seller calls the shots. They have the inventory, it's their home, and they want their money. So again, if you're not coming to the table, first of all, offering them the listed price. Now keep in mind that listed price may already be priced $5,000 over market. So if you're coming to the table, well, oh, it's overpriced. I'm going to give you, if they list it for $300,000, I'm going to give you $225. Well, they'll tell you have a good day and next. You know, they don't have time and they don't want to play games. You don't have the negotiating power in a seller's market. But in a buyer's market, when there's plenty of inventory, you have the power to negotiate because people want to get rid of it. They want to move it along, but we're not in that market. Now, will we be in a buyer's market? Eventually, but right now, we're not. We're in a seller's market. So keep that in mind when you're out here, when you're looking. You don't have negotiating power. Now, in real estate, we'll tell you as realtors, all things are negotiable, but not in this market. You know, and that's just point blank, period. Not in this market. Now, you can negotiate and you can lose and you can win. You just have to strategize and be competitive in your offer. And you need to let that seller know how bad you want the house. Okay, so with that saying, let's jump into the home buying process. So I talked about finding a realtor, finding a firm. Hey, that would be one of us. I'll throw that little commercial out there. That would be one of us. The pre-qualification process. You want to find a lender, preferably the lender that you've been banking with. You want to go to them and talk to them about their pre-qualification process, what all it would entail as far as getting you pre-qualified for a loan. Now, on today, I had invited a lender from Fidelity Bank to come out and speak with us, but unfortunately, she had to cancel in the ninth hour because she found out that they're going to have to turn her husband over to hospice. So, her name is Kim. Please keep her lifted up in prayer. She couldn't apologize enough. I asked her to please not apologize, that she needs to be with her husband. So that's why she's not going to be here today. I was more prepared to give Kim the floor to discuss that process, because that's where so many buyers get tripped up, because they don't understand that you just can't go out here looking for a house and don't know what you qualify for. Because if you only qualify for $150,000, you can't go out here and look at a $250,000 house unless you have some money somewhere. But you would have to disclose that to whatever lender you decide to use, that you have the shortage. And then, of course, you need to be ready to let them know where you got that money from. Was it a gift? How did you acquire those proceeds? So there's a lot of background work behind that. So first and foremost, choose a lender. Now, you need to have at least 3 solid, reputable lenders that you want to work with. Now, Latron, I don't know from the firm you're with, do you guys offer preferred lenders that you guys work with? Same with me. With Redbud Group, we have preferred lenders that we work with. I generally refer people to Cross Country Mortgage. So they're an excellent group out of Charlotte. They are local. And what I like about Cross Country, if for any reason you come up short as far as what you can qualify for, meaning you don't qualify, they'll work with you and help you get on a path to be able to qualify. So I like to kind of throw them business because they will do that for you. They're very responsive. They will reach out to you the minute. I like to send a clean email to hand people off. I don't like to just say, hey, call, Latron, or hey, call DeVita. They're looking for this. No, I like to do an introductory email saying, hey, thanks for talking with me. I really appreciate your time. As I mentioned, I want to introduce you to one of our preferred lenders, Cross Country Mortgage. They're going to help you through the pre-approval process. So that's kind of how I do it. I don't know, Latron, you guys probably do similar. So that's our process as far as getting you to a preferred lender. So again, 3 solid lenders you want to work with. Now, a lot of people ask, will that affect my credit score? And again, Latron will jump on that about, what do you call it? Repeat inquiries on your credit. So, he'll touch on that. I don't want to steal his thunder. But again, 3 solid, reputable lenders. Okay. Does anybody have any questions from that point? And I'll keep moving on. Anybody? Okay. And we can grab questions at the end as well. So once you've been pre-qualified, once you've gotten a lender that says, hey, you've been pre-qualified for $250,000. Now, and I'm gonna tell you again, today's market is like finding a needle in a haystack to find a house for $250,000. You can find it, but they're in some interesting areas. So one thing I would ask, that when you do find a realtor that you are working with, please do not ask that realtor about the crime statistics. If it's a good neighborhood, the question I hear all the time is this a bad neighborhood? Why hasn't this information, why hasn't the prices caught up with some of the other surrounding areas in Charlotte? Well, first of all, as a realtor, that's not material information that we have to disclose to you. As a buyer, do your homework. Get on these websites. I mean, we're living in an information age. We have no excuse. Get on the internet. Go into these neighborhoods. Look up their crime stats. Better yet, pick up the phone. Call the police that's responsible for covering that neighborhood and ask them, hey, what's the crime like, the crime stats in this area? Tell me, you can call pull up the school, if it's Gaston County, you can pull up Gaston County school systems. Find out what the schools are like. please don't ask a realtor to do all that for you, because really it's your responsibility as a diligent buyer to be able to do your homework, do your due diligence. And for myself, when Pastor and I, when we were buying a house, we rode through that neighborhood in the morning, we rode in the afternoon, we rode in the night hour, because we wanted to see what kind of people are out. What's going on? Is this a quiet neighborhood? Is it an active neighborhood? We would meet each other coming and going. What you doing here? What you doing here? So do that. Ride to that neighborhood. And I guess for me, some of the best information, and be careful, be prayerful. When you're knocking on doors, we're living in different times now. Ask some of the neighbors. They'll tell you. And also, please don't ask a realtor, did somebody die in this house? Now, as a realtor, if we know, we can tell you, we can disclose it. But please know, this is not a material fact. The only time it is considered a material fact is if there was a meth lab in that house, which would deem the house uninhabitable. It'd have to really be just torn down. But we would have to disclose that to you. If there's anything structurally wrong with that house, that's considered a material fact. So we can disclose that to you. If we find out for any reason why that seller is selling the house, as our fiduciary responsibility to you, we have to disclose that. Anything we find out, that is a material fact, structural, meth lab. But if someone died, we can't disclose that. If someone was handicapped, we can't discuss that, because we can get into fair housing issues with that. So please don't ask a realtor that when you're doing your homework. Do it on your own, because you're arming yourself with information, and you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting, because you're going to be the one living there. You're going to be the one paying the mortgage, because the bank is not going to hear, well, I didn't pay my mortgage this month because somebody got shot last night, so I just hadn't been there. No, you still have to pay that mortgage every month. So do your homework, do your due diligence. When you're looking for houses, when you're looking for homes, make sure you're doing the research. Because again, your realtor's there, and most of them have a wealth of knowledge about areas, but it's nothing more. I think it's important in this day and age that as a buyer, you arm yourself with as much information as you can. Do your homework. Okay. When you are, let me turn the page here. I apologize. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. And if you do, please stop me. I don't mind at all. So let me talk about some of, and this is a nice little pamphlet that our team put together about the home buying process. I can definitely get you guys a copy of this. I think it is really a great tool. I apologize for not having any. I did not get to go by the office yesterday to pick up some, but I will definitely grab a couple for anybody who's interested. Just let me know on Sunday, and through the week I'll get over to the office and pick up some. But the different terms that you're going to hear when you are pre-qualified, you know how much you've been approved for, you know how much house you can afford, because that's what a pre-qualification does. It tells you what you can afford. Once you know this information and you're ready to look for a house, you start looking, you've done your research, you know about that neighborhood, and you love that home, you're ready to make an offer. You say, hey, Roz or Ron, I'm ready to make an offer on this house. Okay, so we know the house, you've been pre-approved for $250. Well, the house is $225. Okay, that's the listing price. So we know we need to at least start there. Now, if you go in there offering them $200,000, that's really not worth our time typing up the contract, putting in information, because the seller is just gonna, put your contract in file 13. They're not even gonna look at it. They want to look at people who are serious contenders. They want to look at people who really want the home, because as is, guys, we are emotionally attached to things. And when you're selling a home, you've put time into that home. You've done things to that house that you love and you're proud of. But here's the flip side of that. People may like your home, but they don't necessarily like your style or your taste. So keep that in mind. You're selling the home for a buyer, not for yourself. Just because you like something doesn't mean, Aaron likes it. It doesn't mean he may have, different tastes. He may have a Eurocentric taste, and you may have country taste. Well, it doesn't. He likes the home as a structure, but he didn't like the decor, and that's okay. Your key at the end of the day as a seller is to sell the home. Okay, so keep that in mind as just a little segue for sellers. But you're ready to make an offer on this house, so they're wanting 225 at the gate for it. You need to consider, after your realtor has done a comparative market analysis and said, hey, yeah, they've priced this fairly. You know, it's a fair price, it's a fair asking price. Are you willing to make this offer at 225? And to really make your offer stand out in this market, there are offers that are way over that. If it's listed at 225, there are people offering 250. There are people offering 300,000. Okay, so yeah, here's the problem with that. These people are so serious about buying those homes. Is the house going to appraise for that? That's your next question. So if it doesn't, they'll say, hey, I don't care if it appraises or not. I'll bring the difference. I'll bring cash to close. So we have people that are in position to do that. And in today's market too, and LaTron, you can jump in as well, we have a lot of investors that are out here making it really hard for just your average buyer. They're buying up a lot of these properties and these communities and these subdivisions because a lot of the homeowners ownerships, the HOAs, are allowing a certain percentage of these properties to be bought by real estate investors to be rented out. The magic number I've been seeing, and if I'm wrong, just let me know, is about 40% is their rental cap. They can have at least 40% of the houses in that community being owned by an investor and rented out for proceeds. So for rental proceeds. So keep that in mind. And the thing about renters, nothing toward renters, but they don't own it. So they're not going to have the same respect for that property as you would as a homeowner. So look at that when you're looking at neighborhoods. What's the rent cap? How many of the houses in this subdivision are owned by investors that are renting these properties out? So again, it goes back to doing your due diligence. Okay, so you're ready, you're making that offer, you decide, hey, Roz or LaTron, it's listed at 225. Let's do 250. Okay. So how much is that over the listing price? 25, something like that, about 25,000 over. That's what stuff is going. If you're not willing to come to the market with these strong offers, 9 times out of 10, your offer's not going to get accepted. Should it be that way? It's the old adage, supply and demand. It's the way it is. Now we can argue, should it be that way? Should it be another way? We can have that debate all day, but it is what it is at the end of the day. So you've got to have a strong offer. And when you're talking with that realtor, please don't put the onus on the realtor to tell you what to offer. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm not going to do it. LaTron, because you could always, that buyer could come back and say, well, you told me the offer. I've had that happen. But my recourse has always been, I suggested. My job as a realtor is not to make you, it's to advise you. Okay? To give you advice. At the end of the day, as the buyer, you have to make the best decision that fits your budget and what you can afford. Because there's one thing, and I'll come right back there, there's one thing to be in a house that you love, but you're sitting on the floor and you popping a can of Van Camp's pork and beans, because you eating out that one can of beans for a week. Get what you can afford. Yes, sir. Due diligence fee. Right. Okay. So with earnest money, a due diligence fee is a non-refundable fee. So I'm gonna put it right there too. It depends on the state you're in, because South Carolina, it is negotiable. You don't necessarily require it, but I think that's changing. I think South Carolina is getting ready to change that, where they're going to start, I don't know, necessarily requiring it. I don't know that it's required. Yeah, I think they're getting ready to shift toward like good old North Carolina is doing. North Carolina does have the due diligence fee. So the seller wants to know, well, okay, well, how serious are you, about buying my house? These due diligence fees, guys, can be as low as 1,000. As low as 500, and they can be as high as 25,000 over. or even 50,000 over. And this is money you lose. But this is money that gives you negotiating power to say, hey, I really want your house. And because I really want your house, if you accept this contract, I'm going to, within 24 hours of this contract being signed by both of us, I'm going to send you $25,000 to let you know, hey, I'm serious, and take this house off the market. So while I'm doing my due diligence period, while I'm doing my inspections, my appraisal, while I'm doing all this to see, hey, is this a good fit for me? Okay, so it is non-refundable. Let me say that again. It is non-refundable. Now, one thing you don't want to do is insult a seller. A lot of times people think, as realtors, people think that we're working for the seller. Now, here's the flip side. Here's the kicker. The seller pays the buyer agent's commission, not you, the buyer. And see, I think a lot of people confuse that. They think just because we're representing you as a buyer's agent that you pay. And the only time a buyer will pay an agent is if the seller says, I'm not paying the commission. So then, of course, we don't work for free. You as the buyer will be responsible for whatever our commission percentage is. I know at Keller Williams, we do a 6%. It's not etched in stone. It just depends on your firm. We do 6%. That 6% is split 3 to the buyer agent and 3 to the selling agent. So let me educate you on that right quick. People think that, oh, you're getting all that money. No. We have to split that between each realtor. Okay? So I know at Keller right now, I think the going percentage is about 2.5. We're starting to see that, and I've seen one as low as 2 the other day. So they keep creeping on down, But keep that in mind. Due diligence money is non-refundable. You do not get it back. So whatever you put up, be sure you can afford it. Yes, sir. They will not. Right. And that's a very excellent question. His question was that you put up this enormous amount for due diligence, and the appraisal comes back, and it comes back less. Am I restating that right? It comes back less than what the property is listed for. His question was, does the seller adjust the listing price? Because the bank is only going to lend you up to the appraised value. They're not going to lend you $1 over. Okay? Bank is only going to lend up to the appraised value. His question was, will the seller adjust the listing price to come down to that appraised value? Now, here's the answer. Sometimes they will, and sometimes they won't. In this market, no. Yeah. So that's why you're starting to see, well, not starting, that's why we see a lot of what they're called as appraisal contingencies that are signed at the time of the contract saying, hey, if this appraisal, now the way I advise my buyers, if this appraisal comes back, because none of us, I don't care how wealthy you are, none of us just want to give away any kind of money. I don't care if it's 50 cents, it's still your money at the end of the day. I like to include an appraisal contingency that says, hey, if this property comes back less than the appraised value, you will either come down to that amount or we walk, and we want our due diligence money back. Now, will the seller sign that? No, most of the time they don't. But again, in real estate, all things are negotiable. But I still include it to let them know we're not just going to give you, $500 just to walk away from. And if for whatever reason, if this thing falls through, I'm out $500 every time. You don't get that money back. But with that contingency, I'm saying to you, if it doesn't appraise and you're not willing to adjust the listed price to the appraised value, we walk and we want our due diligence money back. Did that answer your question, Craig? But again, no, they don't always adjust to the appraised value. Anybody else have any questions? And then the earnest money, Pastor had mentioned. The earnest money is another deposit that says, hey, I'm super serious about buying your house. And just to let you know how serious I am, I'm going to give you, within 24 hours of signing this contract, I'm going to send you via certified check with a tracking number, the $10,000 for due diligence fee, and within 5 days, I'm going to send to the escrow, the closing attorney, I'm going to send him $2,000 to hold in escrow. Now, all this money, that this $10,000 comes off of the $250,000. So now it's $240,000. So everything you send towards the purchase of that property, it's coming off the listed price. So if you put $10,000 down as due diligence money, it's now $240,000. You put $2,000 down, it's now like $238,000. Okay, it all comes off the day of closing. Okay, on that closing disclosure. So Ron, did you have anything to add? But I just wanted to put that out there. So the earnest money is refundable. So for any reason, just like Greg was saying, if the appraisal comes back, it's less than what the listing price is, we decide to terminate the contract, you get that $2,000 back. You just don't get the due diligence fee. Did that answer your question, Pastor? Okay, anybody else? And I think it's important. If you have any questions, please jump in and ask. Yes, ma'am. They're not, because the tax value is not accurate. It's just not. You don't really want to go by that. An appraised value is, an appraiser going out there looking at that particular area. A tax value is more like an assessment, an assessed value. But an appraised value is them actually going out there looking at what has sold in that surrounding area within the last 6 months. They're only going to go about it, depending on the uniqueness of the property. They're only going to go about 1 to 2 miles radius outside that community. Now, if you have one that is very unique, they may have to go a little further radius out. But they're going to find comparables. Right.
Well, yeah, typically with a brand new home. Oh, so her question was if it's a brand new neighborhood with a brand new home. Oh,
With the
oh, okay. It could, right? Yeah, that that particular situation, the surrounding area could affect that new construction home, because it's based on the neighborhood, and if there's another, if the house is not comparable to the neighborhood, sometimes they can go out. Like if it's a significantly more valuable house, sometimes they may travel out a little further, but part of the value of the house is where it's located. So it's a location, location, location. So, oh yeah, yeah. Now, well, that does matter. Like, let's take for instance, if you have a new construction in a neighborhood where there's a standard, commonality of certain types of, gold light fixtures, diamond chandeliers. If you want your house to compare, you want to make sure you meet that standard. However, if it's a situation where you have a higher price, you want to kind of match the neighborhood, because a lot of those more expensive fixtures will not add value to the house if they don't match the surrounding area. Now, if it's like this is definitely not an ideal situation, but let's say you have a $1 million house in a neighborhood with $400,000 homes. Yeah, you're going to lose some value, but if it's a relatively decent neighborhood, an appraiser may go out further to find a comparable house, especially if it's in like a rural area, where there's not, a lot of properties around. They may extend further just to find a comparable house. I've heard situations where, appraiser may go out 5-10 miles to find a comparable house to generate an appraisal value. So it's just something to think about. I wouldn't do that, but if it's someplace you want to live, and but just know it's going to affect financing. If you got cash to pay for it, I say go for it. But if you're looking for financing, that's something that's going to be considered the location.
Right, because at the end of the day, the lender wants to know, in the event something happens to this house, what is our recourse? How are we going to get our money? Replacement value, all of that they're looking at. What are we, at the end of the day, how are we going to get our money? And you see it all the time. People build these ginormous houses in communities that have trailers around them. And a lot of time people they build based on what they want, not thinking down the road, am I going to be able to get out of this house what I put in? So keep that in mind. It's called, even if new construction, make sure you're building in a community with, as best you can say, like-minded homeowners. You don't want to build a house in a community, and next door, they've got their house is on cinder blocks, but you're building a $650,000 house beside a house on cinder blocks. It's called overbuilding for the neighborhood. You've overbuilt. And we see it all the time. There's a house in this area near the church, beautiful, absolutely gorgeous, but around it, trailers, all kinds of stuff. I don't understand it. There's another one that is built so close to the road on Redbud, cars run off the road all the time. And all I can envision when I go past that house, and I pray, Lord, please don't ever let it be me or anybody in my family or anybody else for that matter, but it's too close to the road. There is no front yard. I mean, you step out of the front door and you're in the road. You're in Redbud, literally. So again, house is huge and it's around houses that are comparable. But again, was that a good spot and location to build in? No backyard, 3-car garage, no backyard. Literally, you step off the deck and you're going down a cliff. So again, understand the demographics of where, if you were building, or anybody for that matter, understand the demographics of where you're looking at building. But you definitely don't want to overbuild for a
community. Unless you know for sure, for a fact, that you're going to live in that house forever, you want to think about being able to resell it in the future for a higher price. So when you look at houses that have no backyard, or you got to think about how easy will it be able to sell, or I'll be able to sell the house in the future, right? And hopefully be able to gain a profit when I sell it. So that's just something to think about when you're buying a house. Like if you buy, I'm not saying you're doing this, but let's say if you do decide you want to build a nicer house in a not a bad neighborhood, but a lesser neighborhood, those lesser price homes will affect the price of the house. Yeah. Well, that's a different situation, right? So in that particular case, if the market does, okay, so the question was, what happens if, the market, if you buy a house that was worth, let's say 500,000, and, years later the market tanks and the house is worth less, and theoretically you'll be upside down, kind of in your mortgage. So in that situation, I mean, there's really nothing you can do, because everybody is going to be affected. It's one of those things where you kind of just have to weather the storm, because real estate, as we all know, it has cycles. I mean, back in 2008, and a lot of people lost value on their homes, but then, you know, it eventually came back up. And look, and we're you know, there's a lot of speculation. I personally feel, you know, even with this market, I don't think there's going to be a crash per se. I think there's going to be a correction. And when I say that, I mean, you know, right now prices are, you know, extremely high, but eventually they're going to dip. You're going to see them dip a little bit over time. It's not going to hit the floor. That's my opinion. I think a lot of people, you know, share that same opinion. But who knows what may happen in the future? You know, just kind of have to, you know, go ahead and get into your investment. To have a house in a market like this is a lot better than not having one. You know what I mean? I got friends now that want to get a house and they're paying, their rent just went up and they can't even find a house, you know, because prices are so high. Yes, sir.
Say that one more time, I'm sorry. Okay. So in the event that you find a house that you like, you submit an offer, and your offer is accepted, you've submitted your due diligence money, you're now what we call under contract. Okay. Under contract means you're now going into your due diligence period. Due diligence periods can be, depending on the type of loan, they can be anywhere from 10 to about 21 days is standard as far as due diligence period. And this time, you know, a seasoned diligent realtor will order a home inspection. When you're ordering your home inspection, you want the home inspection and the termite inspection. North Carolina is infamous for termites. And I mean, it's just the way it is, the soil here. So you want both. Do not, and I cannot stress this enough, do not, because of your want to be competitive, forego that property inspection. Because you want to know as a buyer, an intelligent buyer, what you're buying. Because the last thing you want to do is forego that appraisal and that inspection, and that house have all kind of structural issues, all kind of termite issues, water damage, all kind. There's just a plethora of things that could be wrong with it. You do not, please do not forego that property inspection and termite inspection. Even if you're doing new construction, hear me good. Please get a pre-drywall inspection and a regular inspection. Do not. Now, that builder should have a termite bond, so they will provide you with that. But do not, just because you think it's new, there's still issues with brand new homes. Do not forego those inspections. Right. And if had you not gotten an inspection, you wouldn't know that. You know, in this market, we're seeing a lot of what they're calling sight unseen offers. Don't even know what the place looks like. And offering ridiculous amounts of money for places that they haven't even put their feet on. Go look at that property, because these pictures lie. Guys, they lie. I went in one house and the pictures had those rooms looking like they were so big. Went in that house and we were literally like this. You go first. Okay, you know, it was so, and they want to talk. Don't talk in that house, y'all, because we're living in a time where people have video cameras. They're recording you. They're watching you on their cell phone while you're going through that house and looking at it. I always tell my buyers, let's talk outside. And even with that, you still have to be careful, because they can pick up conversations outside. Have your conversations off-site. Go in, look at it, keep your comments to a minimum. You know, even if you don't like it, just keep that to yourself. And then when you get back with your realtor, you guys have that conversation. Because when you're going in these properties, you kind of want to know what you like and what you dislike about the property. But don't disclose that while you're standing in there. So again, please do not forego the property inspection. Get that inspection, because it's going to tell you what's going on behind the scenes, underneath the carpet, in the walls, underneath the crawl space. Because I can't tell you, one house I sold, walked in, and I was wondering why I walked in the house, but as I was walking, I was getting shorter and shorter because the floors were literally separating from the walls. And I said, oh my, oh my. I said, I'm no structural. I said, I'm not a structural engineer, but we got a problem here. Houston, there's a problem. I shouldn't be getting shorter as we're walking through this house. And the buyer's looking at me like, what in the world? But again, the seller didn't do their due diligence. And I got her every penny she needed to fix those floors. The joist underneath, the structural engineer we had come out there stated that nobody should even move in that house until the piers were reinforced underneath the house. They literally had the piers sitting on top of bricks that you could just go and kick out from under, the pier. That's what was holding the pier and supporting the floor. And they didn't see that. I said, I am not an engineer by no means, but I know something's wrong. I shouldn't be getting smaller as I'm walking through this house. Right. They don't care. That's to answer Aaron's question. They should, but they don't care because their thing is do it cheap, do it fast, and just get something done to get it sold. That's the key. They don't care, and God forbid if you catch it. What? No, oh yeah. Because I'm looking. I'm going in there and the buyers, oh, this is so beautiful. Oh, there's a brown spot right there that's leaking. You might need to get that checked out. That's signs of a leak.
I've seen situations too where people, the vents that are on the walls for the air conditioning ducts. Well, apparently one builder just put a vent on a wall. There was no hole. So be careful. Check your vents. Make sure there's air coming through the vents because folks are trying to get over.
And they will get over. Right. And what Greg was saying, they get subcontractors that go in there and they do work that's not approved. And what we call it in our world is unpermitted work. They didn't pull permits to get the work done. They just went in there and done it for cheap. And anytime you have work, and this is for my people that already own houses, anytime you have room additions, anytime you have anything done to that house that's going to potentially add value, you want a licensed contractor. You want a licensed contractor who's going to go and pull permits to do that work. Because what an inspector is going to do when you get ready to sell that house and you've added on this beautiful sunroom that is just absolutely gorgeous to look at, and he's going to go and look and see if there were any permits pulled to build that room. Okay, no permits. Okay, so this is called an unpermitted build. You can't count that in the square footage. It will not be added into the square footage of that home because people will want to inflate how big a house is. But if that addition wasn't permitted, you can't count it. Right. He was basically saying the cost of the inspection and the appraisal. Okay. It's totally different. That's not factored into your loan proceeds. Okay. You've got to pay for that. All right. That appraisal you have to pay for. Once it's completed and that report is put together, you need to have the funds to pay that appraiser because he's not going to release that report until it's paid. So that has to be paid up front. Some appraisals can run anywhere from $450 to $800. It just depends on the property. And then a property inspection can run anywhere from $400 to about $750. Again, this has to be paid up front outside of closing, before closing. So you have to have that money. That's why I said, when you're looking to buy a home, look at, the costs that it entails. Now, there are programs that will give you down payment assistance. This is for down payment and will help with some of the cost of this stuff. So again, we'll touch on that a little bit later, but you don't leave any money on the table. If there are first-time home buyers programs, check them out. Utilize those funds. But again, those monies are monies that you as the buyer have to pay before they can release those reports. So that's all part of the due diligence process. Within that 21 days after going under contract, within that 21 days, because first and foremost, you want to get that inspector out there, that property inspector out there, because he's going to go. The guy that I use, he's amazing. It's Carolina's premier, and he's very thorough, very thorough. He leaves no stone unturned, and he's going to let you know, that this is what we see in the report. Very extensive reports. Now, do know that your inspector is not there to tell you how to fix it or who to get to. They will tell you need to get a licensed contractor or a licensed structural engineer. They're not going to tell you how it needs to be fixed. They're going to tell you need to confer with someone who does that. This is what we see. They're going to look for any type of electrical issues, because I can't tell you the number of people that have bought houses and the wiring was shot. So they're going to look at that. They're going to look at electrical panels to see if they're up to code. So all of that is part of your due diligence process, that inspection. And then your lender is going to engage an appraiser to come out there to go ahead and start and appraising. This is all while it's going through the underwriting process. Okay? Did I answer your question? Did anybody else have any questions on that? It just depends. They can run anywhere from $500 or to $850. It just depends on the appraiser and their costs and the size of the house as well. So. Right. And we see that a lot more now from people who have foregone the inspections and have bought property sight unseen. It was on the news. One lady up north somewhere bought a house, bought it sight unseen, passed on the appraisal, but the basement floods every time it rains. And now she's stuck like Chuck with the house because she offered way over asking, way over the listing price. When I say offered over asking, I'm talking about the listing price. She offered way over, and forewent all of those important inspections, and now she's stuck with a house that floods every time it rains in the basement. Right. So part of that due diligence process, so you're going through there and you've had that inspector come out there and he tells you, you get that report, and it's just a lot. There's a lot of stuff wrong with the house. As a buyer, you have the right to terminate that contract and say, hey, you know what? I don't want to go any further with this. But here's the kicker. You have to terminate that contract within that due diligence period, within those 21 days. If your 21 days are up March 22nd at 5 p.m. and you decide on March 23rd, at 12:01, it's too late. Yeah, you lose the earnest money too. You get nothing. Because at that point, if you did that, the seller could come back and sue you for specific performance. And what that means is, you know what, hey, there's not a house like this. No, the buyer, no, never mind, forget that. But anyway, you have to 5 o'clock March 22nd to terminate that contract. Okay? If you terminate afterwards, you not only lose your earnest money deposit, but you lose your due diligence fee up front. That's gone, non-refundable. But you lose the earnest money deposit if you cancel after the due diligence period has expired. Does that make sense? So please, please, please know that if you cancel that contract after your due diligence is up, you lose everything. Okay?
I just want to add one thing. So you may ask yourself, why would anybody buy a property sight unseen? And people are trying to do this to try to see if they can win the house or in a bidding war or whatever. But a lot of companies out there, like you were saying, a lot of these investors, the hedge funds, they are buying and taking a risk because they know, number one, they think that or assume that the house is going to appraise in the future. So what they're doing is they're buying the house possibly at a loss because they know that or assume that in the future it's going to appraise for more. And also they're looking at cash flow. They'll be able to get some sort of cash flow. The thing about it, they have money in the bank. They have a purse weight, and so you got to be careful as an individual consumer. Unless you got that kind of money in the bank that you are willing to lose, that we do not forego like inspections. We do not forego appraisals because we may not be in a situation like they are. Even if I did have $1 million in the bank, I wouldn't want to risk it. So I would say make sure you always keep that in mind to do your inspections. Pay the money. If you can't do it, don't buy it. Don't try to compete with these companies that are out there buying sight unseen. You'll lose. You may lose until you win. So just keep that in mind.
That's an excellent point. And while you're out here looking, please don't fall in love with these houses because it's so fluid. I mean, that house can be under contract before we put the key in the door. That's how fast stuff is moving this day in this market. It's moving super fast. There have been times that I've actually gone in the house and the realtor was like, well, that house is under contract. I said, well, it wasn't before we entered because I like to check. That's just me checking before we go in that house. Is this house still available? Again, here we are out here. You could have canceled the showing and let me know that the property was under contract. So again, be an intelligent buyer. Don't fall in love with these properties because again, if you're in a multiple offer situation, which most of the lower price point houses are, because you're competing with not only other buyers, but you're competing with investors as well. Flood zones, not a good thing. One thing with flood zones, the insurance is expensive. It's very expensive. And with lenders, they're going to check to make sure. One, let me back up. A good seasoned realtor is going to check and see if that property's in a flood zone. And they're going to advise you, hey, the property is in a flood zone. Now, the listing agent is supposed to disclose that, but they don't always do that. So you can't use that, or as realtors, we can't use that as an excuse because if you buy that property and we haven't done our due diligence to find out, hey, one, is it in a floodplain? Is it going to require flood insurance? Do know that lender will. They're going to check to see if it's in a floodplain and if flood insurance is needed. And they will require you to have flood insurance. Flood insurance is very expensive. If for any reason you drop that insurance once you close, they will force place it, the lender. And they don't care what the premium is. They will force place insurance if you for any reason let it lapse during the time that you are under that particular loan. But with that lender, granted that they haven't sold it off, any lender is going to require, if it's in a floodplain, that you have flood insurance. A prudent realtor will do that. It work for you. Will look that up and tell you, hey, the property's in a flood zone. You want to keep that in mind. as you're also looking at it, I know I had a buyer, myself and a buyer toured a property, and I was kind of apprehensive about it anyway because it was near a creek, which I knew, and I disclosed to her. I said, "This is in a floodplain." Oh, well, my husband, he doesn't care. He still wants to go look at it. I said, "Okay, I just want to make sure that you know that the property is in a flood zone." So we get out there and we're looking at it, and we get to the back of the house, and you could see the water line. That's why they were selling it, because they were having flooding issues. You could see where the water from the creek that came that far up. So that was a no. That was a deal breaker right there. But I mean, the fact that I'm telling you it's in a flood zone should give you some work, or to give you some things to ponder before even going to look at it. But yes, flood insurance is very expensive. If your property is in a flood zone, you do have to carry flood insurance. Right. So you definitely want to have somebody who's going to be an advocate for you, that knows the right questions to ask, because we don't always know. But make sure you as a buyer are asking questions too. But like I said, a good realtor is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. And that's what our job is. While you're working, we're making those calls. We're reaching out to these companies. We're asking the questions. You know, what's going on with this? We're on those long wait times, asking, different, calling code enforcement, calling the county. We're doing a lot of that. So keep that in mind when you're hiring a realtor. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? So again, don't forego those inspections. Make sure you get them. Know that you're going to have to pay them up front. Okay. All right. Now, sometimes, and this is sometimes, you may have some inspectors that will go ahead and allow you to pay at closing. But, just be realistic. Understand that when they do the work, they want to be compensated. Just like any of us. When we do work, we want to be compensated for the work we've done, the time that we put in. Because many of these guys are driving miles and covering a lot of territory. And an inspection can take anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, depending, or 2 to 4 hours, depending on the size of the property. So keep that in mind when you're looking at whether or not you want to ask if the inspector can wait to be compensated at closing. Now, the appraiser will not. They want their money, period. They're not going to wait to closing. You have to pay them up front, or else they won't release the report, which holds up your underwriting, which delays your closing. Okay? Anybody else? All right. So once you've gotten your property inspection back, and your realtor will schedule a time for you to be able to meet with the inspector. I generally like to do Zoom, set up a Zoom call, and we go over the bulleted items. We try to categorize things, the things like anything electrical, anything structural, anything with the plumbing, anything with the roof, that's on the list. And we're going to ask the seller, we want to know, are you going to repair this? Now, do understand that the seller doesn't have to do anything. I can tell you flat out no. Because most of these properties that we're seeing, they're selling them as is. That means Don't come back asking for no repairs because we're not doing it. Period. You know, as is means just what it says. As is. You want it, you get it as is. You know. But of course, I'm not that one. I'm coming back. You should have fixed this anyway. You know, so either we look at fixing it or you decrease the purchase amount. Again, real estate, all things are negotiable. You know, nothing's etched in stone. So how you expect my buyer to eat this cost and pay you $25,000 over, knowing we could have flooding issues down the road? Either you come down on the purchase price or we walk. Have we had to walk away? Yeah, we have. We've walked away from a couple of deals because seller wasn't willing. The seller said, "I'll just take it off the market." Okay, thank you. We're good. Now my buyers lost their due diligence money, but they weren't going to lose any more money, you know, putting it down a rabbit hole. So there was one that we ended up terminating the contract. So again, ask those questions. Talk with those inspectors. Go down that list and see, okay, what things should we really be addressing? Plumbing, electrical, structural. Anything of those three, go back. Even if they tell you no, go back. Because see, at the end of the day, you as the buyer, you can terminate the contract anytime within your due diligence period. Now, again, you lose your due diligence money. I keep saying that because I want to drive it home. You lose that. Yes, ma'am. So every time you see a house that you want to make an offer on, you have to come up with whatever is a reasonable amount. And there is no set amount for due diligence, because we get the question a lot as realtors, well, how much should I offer them for due diligence? I can't tell you that. That's why I say know your finances, know your budget. If you can't afford to offer more than 500, then don't offer. And then just realize that this may not be the house that you maybe need to make an offer on. I'll come right there, sir. You know, this may just not be the house that you need to make an offer on. But don't ask the realtor what you should offer. Now, they may be able to give you a range of what would be a suitable offer. You know, again, because a prudent realtor has already looked at the, done a CMA on that and looked at, okay, one, is it priced fairly? Two, and if that realtor comes back and tells you, hey, this is overpriced, you know, don't get mad. I had one lady get upset with me because the house was overpriced. And she didn't win because she wanted to negotiate down. And I told her, I said, this is not that market. She got upset because she wanted me to, I said, according to the comparative market analysis, this is a fair range from this number to this number. You decide what you want to offer. So she decided. And she lost. She didn't get it. And got mad because they wouldn't negotiate with her. They don't have to. If we submit an offer and they don't like your offer, they don't even have to come back and say anything. You know, but she got mad because they wouldn't counter, is the correct terminology. They wouldn't counter her offer. They don't have to. You know, your offer does not meet what we're looking for, be gone. On to the next. You know, thanks for wasting my time. You know, and I tried to tell her that and spare her that. Then the lady had the nerve to reach out to me and ask me about a contract. I'm like, if you don't lose my number, lose it. Don't call me no more, because you got mad at me because I told you all of this stuff. You know, called me last night. I looked at that phone and I just let it go on the voicemail. And if you listening, yes, I did. Go ahead, sir. Right. And the answer to your question is absolutely nothing. There are sellers out here that are getting these houses under contract, getting $10,000. No. Okay, so there are some disclosures as buyers that your realtor should send you. And every seller that lists a property has to complete these disclosures. One is called a residential property disclosure. Anything that has happened to that property, they're supposed to disclose it. But many of them are checking no representation, meaning if they know, they're not going to tell you. Yeah, that goes on. You get also what's called a mineral oil and gas disclosure. What that disclosure states is that, hey, we own this property, but we have not sold the mineral rights underneath the ground. We own to infinity and underneath the ground. We haven't sold any of that. Or if they have sold it, you know, say for instance, if they've sold their oil and mineral rights to a gas company, they have to disclose that. Okay. Then the other one is if the house was built prior to 1978, it's called your lead-based paint disclosure, meaning that if there's any lead-based paint in that property, you have the opportunity to go and have somebody come in and see, one, if it's an issue with it, how it needs to be remediated. They give you a time, you know, to be able to do that within your due diligence period. So to answer your question, Robbie, nothing. You know, there are people out here listing houses. They know that there are things wrong with it, and they know that many buyers are not going to continue on with it. They'll terminate the contract. They'll keep that due diligence money. They keep it. And there are people out here taking people for just the due diligence money. I'm not a fan of the due diligence money. I'm just going to be honest with you. I try to go as low as I possibly can. But in this market, you know, who determines that amount was your other question. You do as the buyer, because that's why I was sharing earlier. You know, a realtor can't tell you what to offer for due diligence because you know your finances. You should have already known what fits your budget. You should have a budget. You should know what fits. If you can't offer $10,000 for due diligence because your budget is just no room in your budget for that, then don't offer it. And no realtor should tell you what to offer for due diligence. Did that answer your question, Robbie? Okay. It absolutely 100% goes to the seller. All of it. Yes, it does. Yeah, the realtor doesn't get anything outside of that. No kickbacks, no bonuses or anything out. If any bonuses are offered, we have to disclose it and it has to be approved by the broker in charge. So we can't, our compensation comes from the broker in charge, meaning whoever the broker in charge is. My broker is David Johnson at Keller Williams South Park. So that broker, when we get that, when we close and everybody's all happy and the key goes, you know, we don't get to walk away with that closing check. Now, unless you own your own firm and you are your own broker in charge, then yeah, you get to walk away with that closing check. But if you are underneath the firm, me as a broker, I represent the firm, which is Keller Williams. I'm a representative of the firm. So I get that check and I take it to the firm. The firm keeps what they're going to keep and they give me my portion. So, see, a lot of times people don't know that. The only time you get to walk away with that check is if you are your own broker in charge. You own your own firm. You are a licensed broker in charge, and our acronym for that is BIC. Okay? You're your own BIC. Go to the closing. You got your own real estate firm. That's your check. You walk out the door, take the picture with the little key, and keep pushing. You know, but if that is not your plight, you have to take that check, take the picture, and go deliver it to the firm. Okay? All right? So, yeah. Anybody else? And I think I've gone over my time. I'm going to try to wrap it up. Does anybody else have any questions? I know I talked about that. Let me jump on to the closing table. Since we've gotten everything back, we've gone with our little punch list to the seller. They've agreed, hey, yeah, we'll not going to fix it, but we'll decrease the asking price. We'll come down. We'll give you a credit at close for this amount to take care of repairs. Again, this is what you negotiated in, because they wouldn't actively fix those items that were noted, but they'll give you whatever, you've gone out, you've had a licensed plumber come and check out the plumbing issue, and they give you I guess a price estimate saying, hey, it's going to cost $5,000 to fix this, or else you're going to have major issues. So you present that estimate to the seller, the listing agent, the seller, and they come back and say, hey, okay, we'll take $5,000 off the listing price, give you a credit at closing to make those repairs. Okay, so everybody's happy. We get to the closing. Before we get to the closing, we're going to go back out to that property, because say part of the negotiation was they were supposed to leave the refrigerator, the stove, the microwave. We've gone back, what is called a final walkthrough. And we walk through that house, refrigerator gone, microwave gone, all of those good things are gone. So, hey, for the contract, you were supposed to leave the refrigerator. Oh, I didn't know that. And yeah, you're supposed to leave the refrigerator. Okay, well, either they need to bring it back, or they need to give you a credit at close for the cost of the refrigerator. Again, go back through, walk through that property. Anything that's supposed to be there, make sure it's there before you sign the next day. Okay? Get to the closing. They're going to give you your closing package. They're going to go through, the closing attorney is going to go through each document with you, let you know what you're signing as best you can. Read over it. Or, sometimes at closing you don't always have time. You get a preliminary closing package so that you can read over your documents before signing them. So please, guys, ask them for a copy of those documents or read it before you sign it, because you all have, you're signing your life away. Make sure you have read that document before and ask any questions that you may have. I always tell people, before you sign any contract I send you, read it. And then ask me any questions you have, so that we can go over this, so you can enter into it advised, not ill-advised. Okay? So get to the closing table. You've read your documents. You know what each one means and what it is. They're going to go over the terms with you. They're going to go over the North Carolina is a deed of trust state, so they'll go over the deed of trust, and South Carolina is a mortgage state. They'll go over that with you. They'll go over all the closing documents for that. They'll go over the closing disclosure. Please read that so you'll know ahead of time how much money you need to bring to close. Okay? They'll give you that ahead of time. So read over that. Make sure you understand that. If you don't understand it, get with your realtor. Find out, hey, what does this mean? Please educate. Education is paramount. Ask the questions. There are no dumb questions. The only dumb questions are the ones not asked. So please ask, ask, ask. Okay? Get to the closing table, sign your documents, get your key. You don't get the key until the deed is recorded. Okay? So please know that. Sometimes, you may not get the key right away at the closing table, but that you want to make sure, and that's your realtor's responsibility, to make sure you have a copy. We have got a copy of the recorded deed before any keys are turned over, because it's a liability issue. You go in that house and you don't really own it, so you definitely want to make sure that you're not going in there and you don't technically own it yet. Okay? So that's all of mine. Does anybody have any questions before we pivot to the Tron right quick? I mean, does it seem like a lot? Absolutely. But again, if you have any questions, you can see me. I'll be sitting right over here. I will, again, I'm with Keller Williams South Park. I'm a part of the Redbud group. We're a team within Keller Williams. So if you're interested in this little nifty your guide to buying a home, let me know. I will go by the office and pick up a couple so that you can have this. It breaks down everything that I covered, the due diligence fee, anything, any questions you have, please read it, and it's kind of like a little handbook on what to expect when you're a buyer. I also have it for sellers too. So if anybody interested in selling a home, it talks about the consultation as the selling agent, how all that comes into play. So Again, any questions? I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing me to share something I'm very passionate about. I love what I do. I love helping people. I love being there and just seeing the jubilation of being homeowners. It's a very sound investment. It's the number one avenue for generational wealth. If you're renting, start looking at ways you can position yourself to become a homeowner. Because as many of you know, rents are gone up. You can't find anywhere for less than in $1,200. That's low end. You know, this stuff is going up to almost $2,000 a month. So save that money, invest in you. Okay? Thank y'all. I appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. Hey, Sister Megan, did you get that PowerPoint presentation? Yes, that is it. And I'll just tell you when to advance the slides. So yeah, just want to thank Sister Rosalind for that excellent presentation. She called me and she said that, Latron, I need you to be prepared because my part will be short. And I said, okay. But she filled up an hour and a half with a lot of great information. And so thank you. So what I want to cover today is kind of piggybacking off of her. We were supposed to have a mortgage lender here, and she wasn't able to make it, as Sister Rosalind mentioned. So one of the things I'm sure she was going to cover is the requirements for being able to qualify for a loan for your home. And I was going to touch briefly on it anyway, but hopefully we'll be able to get her back so she can discuss that even further. Can you advance the slide? So without further ado, just want to give you guys a little bit of information about me. I am a licensed realtor in North and South Carolina. I'm also a real estate investor. I do business credit consulting, and I'm a business funding specialist. So I don't typically specialize in what they call consumer credit or everyday personal credit, but I know a lot about it, and I can offer any insight. So as far as me being a licensed realtor, I guess you could probably say I'm a selfish licensed realtor. I don't do retail sales like Sister Rosalind does, but I can answer any questions. So if you do have any questions about real estate or purchase or anything like that, please let me know. I'll be happy to answer any questions. And then I work with Sister Rosalind too, to help support, because at some point we're going to have Rosalind Crawford Realty, and I'm going to put my application in and hopefully be able to get a job at some point too. So but yeah, all right, next slide. So we're going to talk about credit, and this is personal consumer credit. So basically, a credit score is, everybody knows, a number that ranges from 300 to 850 that tells you, where you stand in terms of, qualifying for financing. And if you've gone on any platforms like Credit Karma or some of these other places, you probably see numbers all over the place. And you can advance to the next slide. That credit score is made up of 5 things, and if you're taking notes or you want to take a picture or a snapshot, you don't know about this, you should probably do that. But your credit score is made up of 5 things, right? And the biggest thing is your payment history. Some people call it, the way you pay your bills, or how well you've paid your bills on time. But that makes up 35% of your credit score. So if you are, and typically that goes back typically for about 24 months, 24 to 36 months. If you have paid your bills on time for 24 to 36 months, typically you're going to get all of that 35% that is made up in your score. And that's the biggest way to affect your credit score. It takes longer because obviously it's over time, but if you make an effort to pay your bills on time, at least pay them by the due date, then you're good to go. Now, with that said, I'm going to give you guys, I don't know if this is a trick or this could be a problem for some people, but most creditors, they report, especially in consumer credit, they report 30 days after the due date, right? Or typically 31, right? So if you're more than 30 days late, they'll report you're late to the credit bureaus. And the credit bureaus, we know, are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. So you want to be careful with that, because some people ride that and they'll ride it to the 29th or 30th day and they're paid. It's good to have that buffer. So if you can, pay your bills as close to the due date as possible, so that you can, if something happens, if a check bounces or whatever, you have time to recover. Because as soon as it hits that 31st date and you're past the 30 days and it gets reported, that drops that 35% down, right? And so one of the best ways to affect your credit score is to always pay on time if you can. Also, with that, if you typically, depending on what you have, let's say if you have credit cards, same thing, they report the 31st day if you're past 30 days, but you're costing yourself sometimes more money because, banks and credit card companies, they're quick to throw a late charge of, $25, $30, $35 on you if you miss your due date by 1 day. And so just something to think about, if you want to save yourself some money, is to try to plan ahead. If you can get an extra payment ahead, typically that is reflected in your statement, and that can allow you to be able to avoid some of those fees. So that's 35%. So the best way over time is to pay your bills on time. That's your payment history. The second way, the second most valuable piece of your credit score is the level of debt. What that means basically is if you have credit cards, how much of that those credit cards you're using. So let's say if I have a credit card for $1,000, right, and I use $900 and I got $100 left on it. Well, I'm using 90% of that $1,000 credit card, and so my utilization on my credit card is going to be high. Typically, the FICO score or the credit score wants your utilization to be less than 30%. And some lenders, depending on the lender that you try to apply to, they want to see your utilization less than 20%. So that 30%, if you have your utilization on your credit card, meaning if I have that same $1,000 credit card, if I'm using $300 or less on that credit card, I have the ability to get all of that 30%, right, or most of it, right? If you're utilizing 2%, I think 1 to 2% is the magic number to get the maximum amount of that 30%. Some lending institutions, of course, credit card companies, they like to see you carry some sort of a balance, even if it's a small amount. Obviously, if you have a charge card, you want to pay that off every month. But being able to, all it is just being able to see and show that you are responsible in order to get that full 30%. So let's say if you have your full 35% for paying your bills on time, and you get your full 30%, that's 65% of your score right there. All right. Now these are bigger. They may sometimes they take a little longer. I was talking to somebody last night who they have been working on paying their credit cards down, and they got their utilization down from I think it was 95%. Now they're down to 45%. They still have a little ways to go, but they're in a better situation. All right. So then you'll probably also hear that level of debt also is referred to. I think I mentioned utilization. Some people may show it as revolving credit, but it all has to do with revolving credit, typically credit cards. All right. Then you have the age of credit. Many of the lending institutions, of course, the credit score model likes to see you have credit that is at least 2 years or more old. So, if you're brand new, like my kids right now, they don't have credit. So their credit score is probably pretty bad. I hadn't even pulled one on them yet, but that's just because they don't have any credit, right? And because of that, they won't get that 15% of the credit score. And let me give you a little tidbit. Many of you probably already knew this, but if you have kids that are, 17, 18, especially get ready to leave the house, if you want to get them started off on a good foot, you have a credit card that's, 5 or more years old, you can add that child as an authorized user on your card, and they get the history that you have on their credit history, right? So if they have no history, they can go from no history to possibly a 700 credit score or higher. Now that's if your credit is good. If your credit is bad, you don't want to put your kid. You leave them alone. Leave them alone. Let them do what they got to do and get it straight. But if you do have good credit and you want to get them on, start off on the right foot, you can add them as an authorized user. That doesn't mean you give them a card unless you want to. You may want to, especially if they're going off to college or whatever. But you can add them as an authorized user so that they can, if they want to apply for a card and, build their own credit themselves, do that. And, I'm going to tell my kids, I'm going to have to sit down with them and say, hey, you're out here in the world alone. No, not alone, but you're making your own decisions. Take care of your credit, because that number will stay with you pretty much for the rest of your life, right? Unless something changes. And there is going to be a major change in credit reporting that I'm going to go over in a minute. But just to finish this, and then you have the last two, which are 10% apiece, is the types of credit that you have, meaning, having a credit card, which is a revolving credit account, having an installment loan, which is a car, house, mortgage, and then, having other types of credit. So the mix in the type of credit that you have makes up about 10%. That's pretty easy to get. And of course, another one that's real easy to get is the number of inquiries. There are people out there, and there's a way to lose this 10% that sometimes you may not know about. So one way to lose it that you may not know about is, let's say if you go to buy a car, and you go to a car dealership, they're like, okay, you're interested in the car, let's run your credit. Don't ever do that. Because what they're going to do is they're going to sit you down, they're going to put you in this system, and they're going to send your information out to thousands or whatever of credit lenders. And they're all going to sit there and they're going to run your credit. So you could walk out that dealership with 10 inquiries on your credit report, right? Now, with that said, those inquiries will go on your credit report, but if you're out shopping, the credit reporting agencies, they know that you're shopping for a good rate. So typically when it comes to your score, if you have a lot of inquiries within a 45-day period, typically in terms of your score, that should only count as one inquiry, especially if it's like for the same thing, like for a car, right? So let's say you had your credit run 10 times for a car within 45 days. As far as your score, it will count as one inquiry. But those 10 inquiries will show up on your credit report. Does that make sense? The inquiries will show on your credit report, but as far as your score, they will only count as one. So just something to keep in mind when you're out shopping. The best way to do it is if you bank with like a credit union or another lending institution that you trust, go sit down, talk with them, and find out how much you can qualify for. And if you can qualify for it, then use that and go to the dealer and say, hey, I got the money, I want to buy this car. That's the best way. Yes, sir. Oh yeah, so a soft check, there is a way that a company can do a soft check on your credit, meaning it's not a hard pull and it doesn't get reported to the credit bureaus. If you're familiar with companies like Credit Karma or applications like that, that is a soft check on your credit where it basically looks at various information and kind of builds a score, for you, but it's not registered as a hard inquiry on your credit report. So it doesn't hit your credit report, but it is used in order to get a picture of your credit. But typically, when you're talking about buying a house, lenders won't talk to you unless you give them the authorization to do a hard credit pull. If you don't give them that authorization, they're like, they put, what do you call it, file 13? You go into file 13, and they won't even look. What does that mean? That means you just never go, they never go to it. Right, that's the trash can. So they want to make sure that you're serious about purchasing. No. Right, and that's a good point. Now, going back to what I said, they know, like, many, especially in the scoring model, they take it back. They understand that when you go shopping for a loan, that's what you're doing. You're shopping for the best rate. So yeah, you should. If you're looking for good rates, you should do that. I was just suggesting if you have a relationship with, let's say, a credit union or bank, then go talk to them. But let's say in your case, you say, I know I'm not going to get the best rate. Then by all means, shop around. But you're not necessarily going to lose points by shopping around. As long as you do your shopping around within, let's say, 30 days, 30, 45 days, you won't lose points, right? You're going to lose some because, it's going to count as one entry. But let's say if you shop around 20 lenders, right, they're going to all do a hard pull on your credit report. But that's not going to count against you. It's only going to count against you as one pull. And but keep in mind, your actual credit report will show those 20 inquiries, but your score should not reflect that. That's what I'm saying. It does make some difference, right? Because here's the thing: the two dates you need to be concerned with. There's the due date, and there's something called a statement date, right? That due date is when they're expecting you to pay that back. Now, typically, you have 30 days before they report it as a late, right? But your credit score could be affected if you pay after the statement date. Now, typically, you have to look at but typically what I've seen is the statement date is typically 2 to 3 days after the due date. The statement date is when they report to the credit bureaus. So let's say you charge on your $40,000 card, you charge $12,000. Or let's say you charge $30,000, right? So that's what, 75%. So you charge $30,000 on that card. The due date comes, you don't pay that down, which, you're not late. They're not going to report it as a late, right? Because it's not going to be for 30 days. But your statement date comes 2-3 days later, right? You're still owing that $30,000 on that $40,000 card, so you're still at 75%, right? So they're going to take that balance and they're going to report it to the credit bureaus, right? Then when it comes time to compute your score, you're going to lose part of that 30%. Right? You're going to lose part of that 30% because now, let's say you hadn't owed anything, your balance was zero. Now when they report you hadn't paid it down, your balance is 30,000, so you're at 75%. And so now, and don't get confused, like these percentages are percentages of your FICO score, but the percentage I'm talking about, you're at 75%. That's the percentage of your credit card limit. If you're at a 75% utilization, then that 30% is going to go down. If you are at, if you pay that down below 30%, let's say, what's 30%? Like $12,000. So if you're below 30%, then you are going to get more of that 30% here as it relates to your credit score. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And think about it. Don't get caught up on, because these scores, they fluctuate all the time. They fluctuate. So um, if you, let's say you do decide not to pay that $8,000 back immediately, as long as you, the main thing you don't want to have is you don't want to have a late payment, right? Obviously. If you don't care about your score fluctuating, like if you don't check your credit score like I do every day, sometimes 2-3 times a day, then don't worry about it. Just pay your bill, you know, when it's due, or less than 30 days, you're fine. Don't have to worry about it. But if you're watching your credit score every day, and with every payment or every you're seeing jumps, then you want to make sure you understand those statement dates and due date. Also, if you're looking to try to get a loan and you want to make sure that your credit score is where it needs to be, like if you're trying to apply for a loan, you want to make sure you pay attention to those statement dates and due dates, because that is going to determine what your score is going to be, because it's calculated, typically it's calculated, within every 30 days, depending on what platform, but it does kind of fluctuate, almost on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. You're fine. Yeah, 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 yeah. But and again, like I said, with the interval like that, probably won't affect it. But the main thing is just keep in mind, the dates themselves, right? The due date and the statement date, because those, the statement date is when they actually report, and they won't report again for another 30 days. So if you didn't have it paid by the time they report, then you have to wait for the next statement date for the report, and then you show a new score. That's the main thing. Yes, sir. Right. Yeah, unfortunately, with with this society that we're in now, and everything being, your credit worthiness being determined by this credit score, because you have this level of debt, again, that basically is revolving credit or credit cards that adds up to 30% of that score that kind of runs your life. It is better to have some sort of credit card, even if it's one. I mean, if you have others that you don't want to be tempted, cut all those up, but keep one, the one that's the oldest, right? The one that's the oldest that has some age on it, and cut that up. I know people who keep that, but I know people that have 50 credit cards, up to $1 million, but they manage it right correctly, and they get all of their score, but they have funds, and typically these people have businesses and stuff like that. But that's a whole nother thing, that you shouldn't operate your business on your personal credit. That's another lecture for another day. But yeah, you should definitely keep one card. So repeat the question. So, yep. Oh, I see what you did. Yep. Yep. So the question was, so there's a lot of credit repair companies out there that are supposedly helping people with the credit, and some of them are good. However, here's the thing. My advice to that is, do not engage with a credit repair company if they ask you to pay a fee up front, right? So if they ask you to pay $199, $399 up front, then we'll fix your credit. Don't go into business with them. Number one, because you can do a lot of this stuff yourself. You can actually repair your own credit. And I'll talk about some of these ways in the next 7 minutes. But you can repair your own credit. But and then some of them actually do, what they say they're going to do. But the problem is that some of them, could. You ever heard that saying, "Don't poke the sleeping bear"? If you have a creditor out there, let's say you got Capital One out there that you had a card that was charged off, and they kind of just been sleeping on it because you've been kind of under the radar. They're after big fish, but you hire a credit repair company and they go poking. It's like, hey, I need you to remove this. They may wake up and decide, you know what, you're gonna give us problems, so we're gonna give you problems. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't do your credit repair. The whole point of credit repair is to dispute inaccuracies, and a lot of people have inaccuracies on your credit report. So that's all these companies do. They look at your credit report and they see, oh, okay, well, it looks like you have an address here that you hadn't lived there for years and you don't have any credit on. You haven't had any credit issued to that address. You can send a letter in and say, hey, this should be removed from my report. And then if there's a creditor that has some sort of association to that address, but you hadn't lived there when you had that credit, then you could have that disputed, removed, and that could drop off your credit report. So the whole point of doing it yourself is you go and there's a website, and I'll show you. There's a website that you can go to. It's called www.annualcreditreport.com. If you can advance to the next slide. At the bottom, www.annualcreditreport.com. Every year you can actually pull a free credit report and check your credit report for inaccuracies so that you can see where you're at, and if you need to dispute, you can dispute. I'm going to move on to the next slide, and feel free to jump in and ask questions. I'm kind of just going quick. Now these are numbers here. Like I said, your credit score goes from 300 to 850. These numbers could be different, and different lenders have their different scales of what they think is excellent. Some people think, some lenders may think that 720 to 850 is excellent, right? And some lenders may think 300 to 500 is poor. So it just depends on your lender where you're at. But this is kind of just a general breakdown. 750 to 850, excellent. 700 to 749 is good credit. 650 to 699 is fair credit. And then 300 to 649 is poor. The primary credit reporting, next slide. Primary credit reporting agencies are Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. Some people may not know these three credit reporting agencies are kind of like geographical. Experian is kind of mostly the West Coast, but depending on where your lenders and whatever are, they kind of operate more on the West Coast. TransUnion is more the Midwest kind of region, or middle United States, and then you have Equifax, which is more East Coast. And so you probably notice a lot of times when you go apply for credit, look at your credit score, Equifax may be the worst because we're on the East Coast, and you may have more reporting to Equifax. Unless your credit is pristine, then Equifax will probably be good. The next slide. So we have okay. Well, you don't have this one. This fine. Just hold it right there. So we have also, keep in mind, Biden administration is making a proposal. There's an act that's going out, that's being put on the floor to get rid of the 3 reporting agencies, or to have another entity that will basically take over the operations of Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. And it's called the CFPB, or the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And that bureau will basically help to fight the racial and credit inequities that are out there in the current model. And so that's kind of on the floor. It still has a ways to go, but just understand whatever your credit score is now, based on the current model, it could transfer up to that, and it's going to be a lot more difficult to dispute once you're in that system. I mean, because a lot of people are manipulating, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian right now. But once you get up to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and you get your score there, it should be, the idea is it should be more accurate. And so that's just something to keep in mind whenever that happens. And right now it's on the floor. It's not anything in law yet, but it's coming. All right, so now we have, if you want to get your reports, if you go to credit, any type of credit place like Credit Karma, you go to MyFICO, you can actually get a score from there. But the best thing is to get your report. Go to annualcreditreport.com, download your report, review it, put marks on any discrepancies, and then go ahead and dispute those with the credit bureaus, each one of them, and then verify once they verify that they have disputed, and then you pull your reporting in, verify that information is correct. Next slide. All right, so these are some little known entities that a lot of people don't know about. So while you're in your dispute process, if you are looking to remove, let's say, charge-offs and things like that, you should go, and I recommend this, you should go and freeze all of these credit reporting, well, these aren't really credit reporting agencies. These are the agencies that know about that that night that you left the prom and you decided to go speeding down Franklin Boulevard at 100 miles an hour, and you got charged, and they put that on your record. LexisNexis is one of those systems that if somebody wanted to pull your information, it would be in there. And you're like, wow, I'm 50 years old. Why is that coming up? I had a situation where I forgot to pay a ticket 20 years ago, and I didn't show up to court, and they charged me with a misdemeanor. So every time I go to a background check now, I have to explain that, that situation. So you should go. I said you should, if you're doing credit repair, you should freeze these reports. I would. It's up to you whether you want. They make it very easy to do so. I've frozen all of mine, but all of your medical bill information that's out there, you could actually go out and freeze that. If you go to the medical information, or at least understand what's out there, because a lot of times when they go to verify these creditors with medical bills that haven't been paid, they'll go to this bureau and they'll try to verify it. Then you have SaveStream, Innovis, ARS, Check Systems, and CoreLogic. And ironically, CoreLogic is also used for real estate data also. So at the very least, you should go to each one of these bureaus. You can look them up online and pull your reports. You can get your reports from each one of these for free and see what's on it. You'd be surprised at some of the stuff that you would find. So that's what I've done. I actually went through all of these and pulled all my reports and then started checking them for inaccuracies. But also I froze it too, because when you're doing disputes, then the creditors, they like to go and check these reports. If they can't access them, then they can't verify, and therefore they're required by law to remove them. Next slide. Mortgage lenders, like we talked about, they use different criteria for evaluating your credit worthiness. One type of loan, next slide, is FHA. And FHA is a popular loan for especially new and first-time home buyers, but also existing home buyers, depending on the price of the home that you want to buy. There's FHA and then there's conventional. If you use FHA, you can typically get an FHA, loan. I think that these are the new 2022 criteria. And if you have 580 score, 3.5% down payment, or score between 500 and 579, 10% down payment. I don't know what some lenders may or may not want to go that far, but these are like the criteria, and then the lenders themselves, they decide exactly what they want to do. And typically you are required to have mortgage insurance premium on those loans. So you have that additional payment that will be on your, additional amount that will be on your payment. Also, debt to income ratio less than 43%, meaning the amount of debt that you owe versus the amount of income that you're bringing in. And then you must be your personal residence, meaning you typically can't buy a house as an investment property using the FHA loan, and the borrower must have steady income and proof of employment. So these are like the limits, or like in terms of how much house you can buy, or what kind of loan you can get, how much. If you're buying a single family home, you can do an FHA for up to $420,000, a duplex $538, triplex $651, and a fourplex $809. So, and with these, you may say, well, I thought you couldn't buy investment property. Well, you can actually buy a duplex. So for those of you that have not bought a house yet, you can actually live in a house for free. If, let's say, you buy a duplex property, you live in one side of it, charge somebody else to live on the other side, and they pay your mortgage. That's a little nugget for free there. And if you get a triplex, you have you live in your side, your part, have the other two pay the mortgage. Basically, they pay you, and they pay more than the mortgage is worth, so you actually make money to stay in your own house. That's a whole nother thing. Yes. Well, you're not subleasing, you're leasing, right? You're leasing to somebody else. So yeah, that could work. You have a question? Okay. Hey, you can ask. I don't know where I'm going. Question and answers. That's where I'm going. Next slide. Q&A. That's right. Oh, we need to have a deep conversation. Yes, you can buy an investment property with business credit. There are particular certain lenders that will allow you to purchase property and will get a loan to purchase investment property. But you have to understand the criteria. So I guess by you saying business credit, you're meaning get that credit, get the funding under your business EIN. Is that, yeah. And there are companies and lenders out there that will allow you to do that. But there are also ways that you can do it basically creatively, right? You can get what they call credit card stacking, which you can actually get business credit cards, in your business name, obviously your business EIN. You can get those at 0% interest. You could liquidate those cards to buy investment property, and there are ways and methods to do that with no fees or low fees. Buy the investment property, even if you need to like fix up whatever, put it on the market, sell, pay the cards back, and then keep the profit to move to another property or another investment. Mm-hmm. Well, probably a great way is what I was just referring to in terms of, it's called house hacking, right? So you don't necessarily have to buy a duplex or triplex. You can do it with a single family home. You could buy the home, and if you don't mind other people staying in your house, you could either lease a room out, or you could put the room on Airbnb, and you can do it that way. That way you get some additional cash flow as well. But if you do like a duplex or triplex, you can get that in the FHA loan, and then like I was saying earlier, you can lease one side out, and depending on, you know, the place, you probably could structure it where you could live in the other half for free or with very little money, right? Okay. Hmm. Hmm. Okay. Right. Hmm. Uh, well, it depends on whether or not you have business credit already established, right? And then with the business credit bureaus, there are three bureaus. The biggest one is obviously, you probably already know, Dun and Bradstreet, which is the largest. They have about 250 million businesses that they report credit on. But then you have Experian Commercial and then Equifax Commercial. Their Experian Commercial is about the 10th size of Dun and Bradstreet. They have about 25 million businesses. And then you have Equifax. There is no TransUnion Commercial yet. I think that's in the works. But with that said, if you do not have any credit or substantial credit or credit scores built with those companies, with those credit reporting bureaus, then you won't be able to get business credit. Probably the best thing is to buy a house, buy a duplex, let's say, for yourself. If you're looking for cash flow, you can even get like a triplex for yourself, and then live in one unit of it, and then lease the other two out. If you're a 1099 employee, another thing too is you could actually, because some lenders, they want to see that you have steady income, right? And they want to see, they love W-2s more than 1099s. But if you have good tax records, right? If you have an attorney, a tax accountant, and you show, you know, that you have, you know, you've been making money for at least 2 years, a lot of times that can substitute, because there are a lot, that's, a 1099 is considered like a gig worker, and you can, as long as you have good tax records, you can satisfy lender requirements. So that's just something to think about. Always, I used to, you know, I would, sometimes I think I'm smart, and so last several years I've been doing my taxes on my own, but my taxes have gotten a lot more complicated now with real estate. So I have an accountant, which actually Pastor and First Lady turned me on, and he's really getting me straight. You know? So definitely, if you're looking to do that, I'll start picking some sort of relationship with an accountant. So yeah, so in terms of commercial credit, I'm sorry, consumer credit, it's best to really understand, you know, how it works. There are a lot of places. If you go to Experian.com, you go to TransUnion.com, you go to Equifax.com, they have a lot of information on how to evaluate your credit, how to dispute, even on their platforms. Remember, I said you can actually do credit repair yourself. Each one of these credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, they provide ways for you to dispute right there on their website. Easy. And some of the people that, and again, this is not knocking credit repair companies. I think credit repair companies are good. There's some great ones out there that will not take any money up front from you, but they will only charge you when they remove stuff. Those are the companies that you want to work with. But you can log on to these websites and go to dispute some of these items yourself, and then some of these credit repair companies, that's all they're doing. They're just logging on for you and just doing the same thing you could actually do yourself. So the days, some people still do the letters, they take longer, but you can actually create letters, you can send them in, all that stuff. But I found the easiest way is to go online, log into each one of the bureaus, and dispute, and then you'll be able to see results and getting your credit score up. I would. Right. Right. Any questions? You may not know. I mean, it could slip your mind. You know, you can't. You don't know. dispute if you don't know. Just dispute it. You know, because you know, a long time, 10 years ago was a long time. You know. Was I sick back then? I mean, I don't remember that, Bill. You know, I mean, just you know, just have to, you know, be in the church. So, but that's a good question. Good question. Any more questions? Obviously, this is a lot of stuff. Hopefully, this kind of opened your eyes to some things, and you can kind of go and do your own research, or you know, feel free to ask me. You know, I don't mind sharing whatever information. I do specialize in business credit. You know, that's one of my passions. So, you know, if you have further questions about that, please, you know, let me know. Also, I specialize in funding. So, if you know of anybody that is looking for money for their business, you know, I can help counsel them with business credit as well as giving funding. Oh, we got you. All right. Well, that's all that I have. Thank you very much. And like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. We want to keep these meetings going. We want to give a shout out to our publicity director, Ms. Dawn Johnson, for helping us put this together. And of course, Dr. Pierre Crawford for allowing something like this to be brought to the community so that we can continue to provide for, this information for everybody who needs it. Oh, and the production ministry for doing what they do. Thank you so much for getting all these slides and everything so that we can get out to the rest of the world. Of course, everybody here that support, and we just ask you to spread the word. If you have any friends, any family that might want to see this, any business owners, you know, a lot of people are getting to various businesses. You know, this is the great resignation. A lot of people want to leave, you know, the corporate America or wherever they're working and start their own thing. It's a good time to do it. So, you know, feel free to invite other people so we can kind of talk about how that can be done. All right, thank y'all.
Different loans, so we want to be able to talk about that stuff. We want to be able to talk about the continue to talk about the debt piece, investment, all of that. So we are looking to have these trainings and workshops on the first Saturdays of every month. If any of that, whatever dates change, we will definitely get that information out and let you know ahead of time. We are looking to bring in other speakers to come in and touch on these different topics. If you have any topic that has to do with home ownership that you want to see discussed, please let us know so that we can get it out there. And before I take my seat, I do want to say, if you are looking to sell or buy your home, I am going to request that you use Lady Crawford, Rosalind Crawford. I have used her. I started this journey in 2019. I have been a seller, and she talked about how people are just buying up property just like that. We sold a piece of property together. It was only listed for 7 hours, and it was sold. That's quick, 7 hours. And so now I am in the process of trying to purchase a home. We've been on that journey since 2020, and so the market is very different right now, but I'm not going to give up. We're going to continue to look until we find something that I'm happy with. So thank you so much for taking the opportunity to be here today. Thank you to those that are
virtually. We really appreciate it. And I'm done. I'm gonna let Sister Lady Crawford end up. And thank you again.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for your participation. Thank you so much for your participation. Again, we are very accessible. If you have any questions, if you just want to pull myself or Latron to the side, ask us any questions you may have. And I'll be honest with you, if I don't know, I will find out. That's one thing about me. I am an avid researcher. I like to find out answers to things that I may not know. It keeps me growing, it keeps me evolving. So, if you have any questions, I think as a people, it's very, very important to understand the dynamics of credit, the disparities that are going on. And I'll go on the record to say it as African Americans, it's real. You know, there are serious disparities out here as it pertains to home ownership. So don't be a victim by not being aware. That's why we bring this information out so we can inform you so that you will be able to intelligently make a decision that works best for you and what for your finances. But in order to grow, you need to know. So again, as Latron shared, please put the word out there. You see, there's not many of us here, but I'm a firm believer that where two or three are gathered, the Lord will truly be in the midst. He will bless this effort because we are passionate about equipping our people so that we're not walking in the bondage of debt. We need to be able to leave a legacy for our children that they can understand what it means to have generational wealth, not generational debt, where our kids are burying us and all we're leaving is a bunch of debt for them to contend with. We need to be able to financially to educate our children about finances. They're not doing that in the schools, y'all. So we need to have these conversations with our children so that they know how to protect their credit. Because as Latron said, that's a score that's going to follow you. But if we don't know what it's made up of, we'll just go out here in this consumer America that we now live in. We're not a country that creates anything anymore. We've got to get back to our entrepreneurial roots where we're creating, not just consuming. So I thank you. With that being said, again, if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to pull us to the side and ask us. If we don't know, we'll get it. But please put the word out there that, as Minister Johnson said, we're going to do this the first Saturday of every month. If it changes, we'll definitely get that communicated to you. We just want to, we're here in the fellowship hall in the sanctuary right now. We plan to go back to the fellowship hall when everything is ready out there because we like to have, little refreshments. It's a long time to sit without any, food or beverage. So we want to make it worth your while and worth your time. But we thank you for your patience. Again, Pastor, thank you. Production ministry, thank you. Publicity, Minister Johnson, thank you so much. And thank you for coming out. Pastor, if you will close us out in prayer.
Come on, let's give them all a wonderful hand. They did such a great job. Thank y'all so much for all that you bring to the table, and it is so important. If you've been once before, or even 2 or 3 times before, as those that are watching, I want to encourage you to come back, because every time you hear something that continues to educate you, to get you where you need to be, and answer some questions that you need answered as you go through this process, or even help others through the process. And as was mentioned, sometimes you end up helping our young people, our children, to be able to learn how to not just be consumers, but how to actually build generational wealth. That being said, let us pray. Father, we thank you for those that are watching on YouTube, Facebook, those that are here present, and for the presenters that presented on today, Rosalind and Latron. And we thank you, Lord, for the production ministry and for Dawn getting all these things together to do a presentation. A lot of behind the scenes stuff make the out front stuff look And God, we want you to know that we just thank you and appreciate you. Now, Father, we pray, Lord, that we take this information, build upon it, learn what we need to do, ask questions on the side, and find out how to best move forward. We thank you and we appreciate you. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. God bless you. Take care.